He's been on the Supreme Court for 30 years. He saw an off-ramp, he saw an opportunity, and he took it. He's given a lot of good service to this country. He's been a stalwart defender in many instances of federalism, of separation of powers, of freedom of religion. And I think this was a big decision, certainly a decision that portends a lot of interesting activity in the Senate.
And there we have it, Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee. Is he on the short list? Good morning. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And this from the Washington Examiner today. Trump's Supreme Court legacy could be more conservative than Ronald Reagan's. Remember, President Reagan nominated the Supreme Court justice who upheld Roe versus Wade. Trump could nominate the justice who overturns it. That's how unpredictable the politics of the Supreme Court can be. Reagan, the most conservative president since the New Deal, arguably did more than any other single political figure to make the Republican Party pro-life. President Trump, widely assumed to be a liberal Trojan horse during the campaign, was recently pro-choice. Now, Justice Anthony Kennedy illustrates the unpredictability. He was Reagan's pick, who wrote the majority opinion affirming Roe's core holding. His retirement Wednesday opened the door for Trump to assemble the most conservative Supreme Court in American history. Finally, we're going to look things and put things in the proper perspective. And let's face it, we haven't had a good run. We've had Sotomayor, we've had Kagan, we've had Stevens, we've had David Souter. And you're going, Kevin, I have a life. Who are these people? They were justices on the Supreme Court. The first two were Obama's. The last one was appointed by George Herbert Walker Bush, David Souter of New Hampshire, who pretended to be a conservative but turned into a lib. Just for once, I would love to have a lib turn conservative, right?
Democrats want judges who will rewrite the Constitution any way they want to do it and take away your Second Amendment, erase your borders, throw open the jailhouse doors, and destroy your freedoms.
That was President Trump last night in North Dakota. Remember, we're doing our very best to bring President Trump to Idaho. That's what we're talking about, bringing President Trump to Idaho. But this has to be the best news that we've had since the election.
Justice Anthony Kennedy, a very special guy also, just announced a little while ago his retirement from the United States Supreme Court. Great man. And I'm very honored that he chose to do it during my term in office because he felt confident in me to make the right choice and carry on his great legacy. That's why he did it.
Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller in the morning here. We'll be taking your phone calls on this topic throughout the day. And, you know, who should be on the Supreme Court? For me personally, I would have to tell you there's one guy who I think would do it, and that would be Congressman Labrador. Now, I have known Justice Bill Pryor for many, many years. He was the Attorney General in Alabama when I was there. He's on the short list. Senator Mike Lee on the short list as well. But I want you to think about that as we continue to talk about this at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Joining us now to talk a little China, then back to Justice. Well, who's going to be the next justice on the Supreme Court is the author of The Bully of China, Stephen Mosher. Stephen, good to have you with us here at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, how does China continue to get away with cheating? The president holds them accountable, and yet everybody's mad at the president for trying to rein in the dragon.
Yes, it's turning things upside down, of course, because President Trump is not declaring a trade war on China. He's saying to China, the trade war that you've been carrying out against us for the last 20 years has to stop. Trying to end a trade war is not starting a trade war, and that's what he wants to do.
Why have we been so afraid of the Chinese in the past under current administrations?
Well, I'm not sure we've been so afraid of China as we labored under two false hopes. The first false hope was that if China modernized and industrialized, the Chinese people would rise up and demand respect for human rights, human dignity, and more freedom. That hasn't happened. The Chinese Communist Party today is in tighter control than they were 20 years ago. Things are moving backward, not forward, in terms of liberty and human rights. The walls are closing in on Christians, on Tibetans, on all sorts of political dissidents in China. And the other thing was they simply refused to recognize China as a threat because they were too beholden to large companies, large American companies who thought they were going to get 1 billion customers if they moved to China. And, of course, the reality is American companies go to China, find themselves squeezed dry of their technology, and then squeezed out of the country. So those were the two, misperceptions of China. People are now waking up. I don't think it's too late, but boy, the hour is late. We've got another 5 years, 10 years at the outside to turn this around. Otherwise, we're all going to be, our grandchildren are going to be speaking Chinese.
Well, and that's their plan, and they also have infiltrated the universities, not only around the country, but here in Idaho, with the Confucius Institute and others. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I testified before Congress last year on the Confucius Institute, which is very clever. No other country in the world goes overseas and sets up government-funded propaganda outposts in universities and colleges around the world, and that's what these are. They're not just intended to teach Chinese. They teach a potted version of Chinese history according to the Chinese Communist Party. And, of course, they forbid the discussion of the 3 Ts. What are the 3 Ts? Well, you can't talk about Tiananmen, the massacre that occurred on June 4th, 1989. You cannot talk about Tibet, that country inside a country. The Tibetans would like their freedom. They're never going to get it. And, of course, you can't talk about Taiwan, where 25 million free Chinese elect their own government at regular intervals and want to remain independent. And Beijing, of course, wants to crush them as well. So, for a university that is supposedly dedicated to openness and academic freedom, to accept a Confucius Institute undermines the very ground they're trying to stand on.
Well, and people here are very reluctant to report on the Confucius Institute. Is it because they want the Chinese money? And like you've pointed out in Bully of Asia, look, this has been going on for years. They steal our technology. The Boeing deal, and if people aren't familiar with it, if you could talk a little bit about that, Mr. Mosher, the Boeing deal is just an example of how if you want to do business with China, it's all take and no give.
Yeah, it really is a one-sided operation. And what people need to understand is that American companies that go to China are not competing with Chinese companies, okay? American companies that go to China are competing with the Chinese party state that controls everything. They control the regulatory system, and it locks out American businesses and American products. They control the legal system. And, of course, in China, they have the rule of law. Don't have the rule of law. They have the rule of man. There's tremendous corruption. They tilt the playing field, so eventually the American company loses to the Chinese party state. That's a losing proposition from the get-go. Really, the only thing that can be done with China is what President Trump is trying to do. And he's trying to get China to agree to a phased, staged reduction in the trade deficit. You cut it by $100 billion this year, he says. You cut it by $200 billion next year, and we're going to get back to fair and free trade. That's the only way to do it. China has a planned economy. Everything goes from the top down. And if Beijing orders a reduction in the trade deficit, that's what will happen. Otherwise, they will continue to bleed us dry.
Right, and that's their plan to really remake the world with it being China-centric.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. They talk about now the world of great harmony, the world of great harmony. And harmony is really defined in a very peculiar way by the Chinese Communist Party. Harmony in this case, in this sense, means subservience to the party, doing what the party says. If you bow down before the party, everything will be harmonious. Well, yes, it will be. No one will say anything or do anything opposed to the party. They're right now trying to harmonize the Manchus and the Mongols and the Tibetans and the Muslim Uyghurs in the West out of existence, literally, because they are forcibly Sinicizing them. What I mean by that is that these kids, these Tibetan kids, the Mongol kids, the Uyghur kids, are forced to learn Chinese. They're not taught their native language. They're told to abandon their native customs, and they're forcibly turned into Han Chinese as quickly as possible. That's how China is dealing with, the desires of minority people on the borders of China for independence.
Stephen Mosher joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here as we continue on talking about China. How do you expect, by the way, Bully of Asia, his new book, please check that out. How do you expect this to play out? Because the Chinese, it's an understatement to say this, they play the long game.
Well, they do, and they regard the last 200 years as an anomaly, as an exception to the long and glorious history of China, where it was the dominant power not just in Asia but in the world. And, it is a fact that up until 1820, China had the largest population, the largest economy, the largest military, and arguably, in many ways, the most advanced economy in the world. And that had been true for centuries. And China would like to be in that position again. And I have to say that, if China were a free market democracy, which it were not, we would be working together for a truly peaceful, harmonious world. But China is not. China is an ancient empire run by a red emperor, Xi Jinping, who wants to control everything, not just in China, but in the world at large. China invented totalitarianism over 2,000 years ago. It wasn't Karl Marx or Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. It was China 200 years before Christ inventing the first one-party dictatorship run by an emperor who had a secret police, who had control over the economy, who had political commissars in the military, who had concentration camps. The inmates of the concentration camps built what? They built the Great Wall. That's why it exists. So everything we associate with a modern dictatorship, China invented 2,000 years ago, and it's still living it today, sadly, for the Chinese people.
Just to underscore this point, I saw a documentary once where this gentleman went to China, and you had to be careful because you had minders with him. And just to illustrate your point, Mr. Mosher, is that Tiananmen is not even taught in their schools. So you have people in their 20s and 30s that have never heard of it. It doesn't exist in their history.
Right. It's been written out of history. I mean, look, the Tiananmen was months and months of demonstrations. 1 million people gathered in the streets of Beijing, the capital city of the People's Republic of China. 100,000 young people in Tiananmen Square, the main square in front of the National People's Congress there. It was an extraordinary thing, and to see the students, unarmed students, demonstrators carrying signs with quotations from George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. They were demanding fundamental change. They were demanding an end to bureaucracy, an end to corruption. They were demanding democracy. And what were they met with? They were met with troops and tanks, and the troops shot them down with automatic weapons, and the tanks ran over their bodies. In fact, they were crushed so beyond recognition that the remains had to be scraped up using bulldozers. A lot of young people in China don't even know that this happened because it's been written out of history, and it's forbidden to be talked about in China today. Not just, in classrooms, but if you start talking about Tiananmen on your cell phone in China, your cell phone is blocked. It's incredible the kind of digital dictatorship, electronic dictatorship that we're seeing develop in China today.
Certainly a topic that won't be taught in the Confucius Institutes around the nation.
It won't be. It won't be. And there are a lot of topics that won't be talked about in that way. You can't even compare. Xi Jinping is a portly fellow. And when people in China were talking about Xi Jinping last year, they would use a Winnie the Pooh meme. Winnie the Pooh, the little bear, the cuddly little bear who likes honey. And that was their way of referring obliquely to Xi Jinping. You couldn't talk about him directly because that would be dangerous. But the censors quickly found out that Winnie the Pooh actually meant Xi Jinping, and now they blocked Winnie the Pooh on the internet in China, along with a few million other things, of course.
Stephen Mosher, we appreciate you, The Bully of Asia. We hope people go out and get your book. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm here at the National Rights Life Conference in Kansas City speaking, and we're all excited about the new position on the Supreme Court.
It's going to be huge.
Huge, enormous. Yeah, we'll get somebody who actually reads the Constitution to replace the retiring justice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Coming up next, your calls on who should be on the Supreme Court. My pick, Congressman Labrador. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The top story that we'll be talking about all summer long is, well, there's going to be a new Supreme Court, and hopefully we're not Charlie Brown. Hopefully Donald Trump isn't Lucy, and we're going to get a real conservative replacing the retired Justice Stevens, known as the swing vote.
Democrats want judges who will rewrite the Constitution any way they want to do it and take away your Second Amendment, erase your borders, throw open the jailhouse doors, and destroy your freedoms.
What other Republican would say that? And by the way, let me correct myself, Justice Kennedy, not Justice Stevens. Tea Party Bob joins us now at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you today? You sound absolutely enthused about what's going on.
It's a great day in America.
That's what I said. What a great day and what a great speech by President Trump in North Dakota last night. As I said yesterday, we are going into a transition period where we will hopefully take back our country from the libtards that have been running it for the past 30 years. Tom Munz is totally correct when he says that we must continue to help the president by making sure we go to the polls and elect the people who will support his administration. If we fall asleep, that ugly nightmare they call the blue wave is going to rear its ugly head as it did in 2007 when Obama was elected. And if you don't think they're going to come out in force in November, you're very much mistaken.
Well, they're going to come out in force over the summer now. This is their biggest fear.
Absolutely. They don't want to let 30 years of work infiltrating our government and cementing the deep state go down a drain, and that's what will happen. You know, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Trump will go down as one of our greatest presidents in history, and his selection of 2 and maybe as many as 4 Supreme Court judges will change the face of our nation for decades to come. Regardless of which conservative he picks, we will finally be in the driver's seat when it comes to constitutional issues that came before the court. There is even a possibility that Roe versus Wade would be overturned and possibly even same-sex marriage. These are the 2 major issues that are going to divide this country and the issues that the Democrats will really rally behind. This is why we need to be vigilant and make sure we all get out and vote and support conservative candidates, both on a state and federal level. I'm only hoping that Trump will nominate a woman to the Supreme Court, as this will make it hard for the Dems to argue that he's against women, and that will deter them from rallying the female base.
Oh, they're going to rally, and, you know, there won't be a restaurant for Sarah Sanders or for anyone to go to, but how about your guy, Congressman Labrador?
Well, I would say Congressman Labrador would make a great candidate, but I don't think he has the judiciary experience. He has the legal, but he doesn't have the judiciary, and they're looking for somebody with a lot of experience that the Democrats will have no chance of tearing down, very much like Gorsuch.
Well, they think they're going to go after, you know, but what about Mike Lee? What about Ted Cruz?
Lee and Cruz would be great. Like I said, I still think he would be better off putting a woman on as a conservative. We don't have one. It would be nice to have one. You know,
unlike you, I don't view people through gender. I don't look at things as quotas. I look at people for, you know, who's the best qualified.
Well, that's true, but unfortunately the Dems do. And depending on how much pushback you get.
You know, and I understand we're a female-centric society today, but that would be, what, 3 women on the Supreme Court? You'd have Kagan, you'd have Sotomayor, and you'd have Tea Party Bob's conservative gal.
Yeah, you would have 2 liberals and 1 conservative. I say let's even it out a little bit.
I tell you, Bader Ginsburg better watch out. If Trump has his way, he might be replacing her.
Oh, yes, indeed. She's going to have a problem somewhere along the line. Anyway, I think it's a great milestone for the Trump presidency. Supreme Court is going to finally become conservative, and his accomplishments over the last 500 days. The Democrats don't know which way to turn anymore. I think they're just kind of stymied, and this was the last straw for them. So you're going to see them come back fighting, but I don't think they're going to win this one. We're going to have an opportunity to really change things, and actually, I do believe that if we can change Roe versus Wade, that would be one of the biggest deals. But we'll see what happens. God bless you, Kevin, for your show, and thank you for giving everybody an opportunity to talk.
All right, Tea Party Bob, keep your powder dry. Stay out of trouble. I
will, indeed.
All right. Our great friend Tea Party Bob. Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning.
I'm just Channel 7's Every Giver.
All right, Larry, thank you very much. 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Justice Anthony Kennedy, a very special guy also, just announced a little while ago his retirement from the United States Supreme Court. Great man. And I'm very honored that he chose to do it during my term in office because he felt confident in me to make the right choice and carry on his great legacy. That's why he did it.
Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you all for joining us. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Max in Garden City on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning. I am so excited about the Supreme Court thing because I'm looking, like the Chinese, I'm looking at the long game, Trump's long game. When he puts in a conservative justice, people like Darth Vader Ginsburg are not going to be happy. How many votes do you think it will take for Ginsburg to lose before she begs and says, hey, I'm a fifth wheel, I'm out of here?
Wow.
Think about it. The liberal factions in government, out of government, in the Supreme Court, out of Supreme Court, do not like getting their fanny kicked. They don't like losing. And if you get enough votes, they're going to start feeling like fifth wheels. And Darth Vader is going to be the first one to bow out, I predict. And
Vader
what happens?
Ginsburg, wow, that would be something.
And then Mr. Trump comes along and puts in another conservative justice.
Right.
We could easily have 50 years of a constitutionalist Supreme Court.
I'm at a loss for words.
Well, the whole concept has me so... Understand, when I was living in China, I wasn't coming back to America until I saw some hope for the future. My wife and I had agreed that if Hillary had won the election, we would not, well, we'd leave China, but we'd probably settle in Ecuador or somewhere else. I was so afraid of where this country was going. But now, I'm looking where it's going. We made the right decision to come back to America. This is just, guys, if you've lived overseas for 15 years, if you've been away, but you've watched your country being torn to pieces by these animals, nothing breaks your heart worse, but nothing gives you more hope than to find a president. By the way, Trump is not a Republican except by name. That party did everything it could to kick him out of the election process, too. Trump is the people's president. And the only reason he's Republican is because he had to run on a ticket, and that's the one he chose.
Well, you're right about that.
I want to see the Supreme Court, just 5 years from now. And for all you little snowflakes and you little Californians listening, it must suck to be you. Thank you very much, my friends. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone numbers, you've got them. Let's hear what you have to say. But this is a great day in America. You know, Dr. Lamero, our friend that we have on quite a bit, he's branded me because every time I say great day in America, I think of his books, and that was the title of it. But it is great for America. It's a happy day. when you think about this. And let's go back to where we've been. You know, the conservatives not doing what they should. You've gotten traditional marriage overturned. You've got the transgender decision. All the big social issues. Well, they had their guy, Kennedy, right? Wasn't John Roberts. It was Kennedy. Building upon that, now Kennedy leaves. So what's next for the Supreme Court? You have Tea Party Bob saying Roe v. Wade is over. They can overturn all these things. I don't think that's how the Supreme Court works, but I am getting a little bit more confident about the Second Amendment. And, of course, we're not out of the woods yet. But let's go back. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. And let's face it, Barack Obama never faced the first team. He faced John McCain, underfunded, outgunned, outwitted, with respect to John McCain. John McCain thought the press would catapult him with earned media to the White House. They turned on him. Obama beat him easily. And here's the secret of Obama. We'll never know how much money the foreigners contributed to his campaign because unlike everybody else, he did not accept matching donations, so he never had to disclose who was funding his campaign. Obama gets in. Mitt Romney. Say what you want. Took him on. The only criticism we have of Mitt Romney, with all due respect, is that the soon-to-be senator from Utah went easy on Obama, didn't go easy on Newt Gingrich, didn't go easy on Mike Huckabee, was more brutal, like the Republicans are, like the Bushes, really, more brutal to their own kind than to the libs. We never give it back to the libs, thus setting it up for Donald Trump, who was thought to be a joke, who was thought to be this. Well, I don't think the libs are laughing now. And that's why they're going crazy. This is the turning point in the cultural battle for America. This is where we stop the decline. This is where the 8 years of Obama go out the door. And we can start reclaiming our youth. We can start reclaiming our country. Let's go to the election. 17 Republicans. You know it well. We had some massive debate watch parties. Had massive interactions. Donald Trump was supposed to be the entertainment, but he kept winning. Survive in advance, survive in advance. Hillary Clinton was supposed to mop the floor up with him. She didn't have a contentious primary. Oh, wait, she did, even though the primary system, as we later found out, was rigged. Right? Rigged! Hillary Clinton comes in, she's going to win. Trump beats her. And not only beats her decisively in the heart of the old Democratic Party, the Midwest, the Rust Belt, call it what you will. And then he starts keeping his campaign promises. Tariffs. We're going to make America great again. And with all due respect to Harley Davidson, what type of American company are you that if you have a president who's trying to save America, you're going to move your jobs overseas? That globalist thinking has been the result of the greatest transfer of wealth, of standard of living, of the erosion of the middle class in the last 20 or 30 years than anything else. Companies need to start thinking about not being global, but being American. And the president gets that. Okay, the Supreme Court. Boom. Gorsuch. Boom. Kennedy says, I'm peacing out. And there goes their swing vote. And somewhere in Chappaqua, New York, Bill Clinton is steaming. Because think about it. It would have been 2. They would have had 2 already. Totally rewiring, completing the task of destroying traditional America. That's not going to be the case anymore, is it? Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
Our Republican colleagues in the Senate should follow the rule they set in 2016. Not to consider a Supreme Court justice in an election year.
Sure, that's a presidential election year. Jabroni?
There's no reason to delay. He already has vetted almost everybody on that list.
You're right. Could it be Bill Pryor? Could it be other people? Tea Party Bob saying a woman? I'm saying, why not Congressman Labrador? Well, he doesn't have the judicial experience. Let's take a look at Kagan. Let's take a look at Sotomayor. Let's take a look at those guys. They're embarrassments on the court. And I'm no legal scholar. Heck, I'm no scholar, as you know. But bottom line here, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, this is where the Big Mo continues. This is where maybe some of the most controversial decisions in the past 20 or 30 years, they go away. Now, I could ask you the question, are you comfortable with that? But I think you are. And for people that go, well, I'm not left, I'm not right, you have to pick a side. Because you think they're going crazy now. You wait until this heats up. They're going to pull the Bork move, which is to destroy everyone who's associated with this next nomination pick. They're going to do everything they can. But you know what? They don't have the votes. They don't have the votes. And Schumer knows it. Pelosi knows it. Hillary Clinton knows it. We all know it. So what's it going to be? We'll talk to you next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Timing could not be better for the White House. Quite frankly, without the filibuster rule, the Democrats are at risk of being in a position of a pedestrian watching this confirmation unfold. It'll be a very close vote, very likely, but the votes are not there currently unless there are some defections from Republican senators.
What do you mean?
Many people thought, I'm talking about for the Democrats to block this nomination.
Okay.
It only takes a slightly more conservative nominee to produce cascading effects across about 6 areas of law. The Kennedy legacy is immense, but it's also quite vulnerable. It hangs by a single vote, his own. So most of his most famous cases are 5-4 decisions. It does not take much of a move to the right to undo many of those cases if the nominee feels that they are not supportable. So I think what you're going to see is a very determined Democratic opposition to a more conservative nominee. But I'm not too sure that'll be successful. The one thing about this president that you have to give him is that he has fulfilled his promises more than any president in my lifetime. I mean, you could disagree with his promises, but
nothing's new. He said it.
Yeah, and this was the biggest promise of all. He promised to move that court to the right, and we all understood he was talking about Kennedy's seat.
There we have it. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller in the morning. It's not time to celebrate yet, but it seems that way, where you have Justice Kennedy getting ready to retire and the battle to replace him. Now, that was Jonathan Turley earlier this morning on Fox and Friends, on your home for Fox News on the radio, KIDO Talk Radio. Here's the overall picture from our own Jared Halpern.
Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says millions of voters should get a say on the makeup of the Senate before confirming a new justice to a lifetime term on the Supreme Court.
Anything but that would be the absolute height of hypocrisy.
Schumer is referring to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's decision in 2016 to delay a hearing and vote on a Supreme Court nominee until after the presidential election.
The Senate stands ready to fulfill its constitutional role by offering advice and consent.
McConnell says there will be a vote to confirm Justice Kennedy's successor this fall. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
No, I hate to have this equivalent, but it's like when your favorite team is back after a long drought. Here is Judge Napolitano on, well, the impact, the legacy of Justice Kennedy on KIDO Talk Radio. Well, we'll get to that. The judge is a little shy as we move along here. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. But what type of legacy did Kennedy have and his impact, his removal? What will it mean for all of us? We'll hear from Judge Napolitano next. But going back to just how the odds were set against us, right? And like him or not, the president keeps his word, Judge.
If the issue will be abortion. Because Justice Kennedy, even though he's a daily mass attending, daily Roman Catholic, is pro-choice. And everybody on that list, Griff just put the screen of 25, every single person on that list is pro-life. So the Democrats will see this is the potential demise of Roe v. Wade. I don't know that it is. Steve and I were talking about this before the show started. I don't know that the Chief Justice, who's also pro-life and Catholic, will want to undo Roe v. Wade because of his views about legacy, that you don't change a major decision just because of an election. But the Democrats will perceive it that way. And they have two allies amongst the Republicans who are fiercely pro-choice, Senator Lisa Murkowski and Senator Susan Collins.
Well, here's another one. Will Senator Tester in Montana vote against the nominee? He did against Gorsuch, but he's in a tough re-election battle. Right? And then you've got Manchin in West Virginia. So maybe you don't get the most conservative, but you get rid of two more traditional blue dog Democrats, and you get a Republican in. So, again, like we said, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, this is huge news for the Republican Party. And think about all the decisions that have gone 5-4. I don't know what the decision on marriage, quote-unquote, equality was, whether that was 6-3 or 5-4, but you could see that going. You could see the transgenders in the military going. You could see abortion going. Now, that's playing into the hyperbole. I agree with what the judge said and Justice Roberts said. You just don't undo a legacy. But that's what they did to us. That's one issue at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
I'm just Channel 7's Eric Everett.
Though, that if you're not looking for an Anthony Kennedy, you're not going to get an Anthony Kennedy. You'd take an Anthony Kennedy today. You'd take a Trump appointee.
I don't think anybody's going to believe. Nobody's going to believe that this president, who said women should be punished for having an abortion, nobody's going to believe. By the way, we never know. We've had, Justice Frankfurter and people like that, and Souter have always surprised us. You have people going from left to right, right to left. FDR thought he had somebody in Frankfurter. He went to the right. So the Republicans thought they had Souter in the pocket. He goes to the left. I mean, the fact is, you can't predict. So you look at the party's track record, and you look, they haven't picked many Justice Kennedys. They've largely picked non-Justice Kennedys, people who are hard right on all social issues. So I would say, I think this is going to be the fight of the century. I think the Democrats have to say, no way, non passario, no one passes this line. I think it's going to be almost like Spanish Civil War stuff. You watch the next few months.
You watch the next few months. Of course, we've seen that with their attacks on people just trying to have a meal. Hopefully that won't be happening anymore in America. But what's at stake? What's at balance? The vacancy, right? The vacancy at the Supreme Court and what that means to you. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. That's one issue. Another issue, we're, getting more violent here in the Treasure Valley. You had another story where, you had some shooting going on. We say, well, how, some shooting. But you had some shooting going on in Meridian. A drive-by shooting. Now, remember the quaint days when the economy wasn't doing well and all of a sudden we would talk about the multiple bank robberies that would happen in the Treasure Valley? Where here you have a Meridian man was arrested on felony charges Wednesday morning after police say he fired a gun in the direction of a group of people. Cody Wentworth, 25. 2 counts of aggravated assault. Happened about 5:30 in the morning, West Fairview Avenue and North Mitchell Street. According to witnesses, they told police a man in a vehicle fired multiple shots in their general direction. The suspect also drove his vehicle toward one person, causing them to jump out of the way. No injuries were reported, and officers were unable to locate any damage from the gunshots. But you would see this in California or New York, but certainly not in the Treasure Valley. That's why it's always so important to support our law enforcement officers. It's so important to support their families. What, you had the guy in Meridian that, had the knife, pulled out a gun, and apparently it wasn't real? The police officers didn't know that? They had to protect themselves? We're growing, but that means challenges. That means crime. That means that unwanted element is permeating its way into our Treasure Valley, and we need the police to protect us. and we need to let them know how much we appreciate them. Now you're going to say, oh, you're on your soapbox for police. No, but a drive-by shooting? Road rage? I remember we used to have to import these stories from Salt Lake. Now they're here. Coming up next, how do we protect ourselves? Right after Fox News on your home for Fox News and Glenn Beck with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.